Hi everyone, thank you for being here today. So in the last video, we talked about what a container is and why sessions can feel off when they're not strong. If you haven't watched that video, please do before watching this one because it'll make much more sense. I added the link in the description below. In this video, I want to slow down and walk through what actually makes up a container and what it looks like to start building one in your own practice. And honestly, the easiest way for me to explain a lot of this is through my own mistakes. When I first started doing energy healing, I had a client that would talk and talk and talk, sometimes for 20 to 25 minutes straight at the beginning of a session. I couldn't even get a word in, and I didn't have enough confidence to interrupt or redirect at that time. And I remember thinking, okay, I still need to give her a full session because that's what she paid for. So by the time I actually started the energy work, I was already exhausted. Not only were her stories emotionally intense, but there was a lot of internal tension within me around the whole situation. Over time, I realized a few things. She didn't just want a session, she wanted to be heard. Actually, I think she needed that more than the energy healing itself. She wanted connection. She then started sending me things on social media and then told me that she was looking for friends with the same belief systems. Essentially, if I'm being honest here, she was the one that was leading the sessions, not me. The whole thing felt stressful, and I don't think she ever was getting what she actually needed because most of the energy in the session was going into something the container wasn't meant to hold. The experience taught me a lot, especially around containers and confidence managing clients within that container. So let's start out with what actually makes up a container. There are several components I would like to talk about because containers are extremely multi-layered. The first one is time boundaries. This one seems obvious, but you'd be surprised how many practitioners actually break this. Having a clear start and end time matters more than people think. It tells the nervous system that the session has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Without that, things can stay open longer than they should, and that can lead to a bunch of different issues. Keeping consistent time boundaries is one of the simplest ways to make a session feel more steady. Number two, physical space. The space you work in becomes part of the session. Things like privacy, comfort, and not being interrupted makes all the difference. When you use the same space over and over for this kind of work, it's almost like a trigger for you and your client. This is the space where energy work happens, and both of you can settle into that reality easier. This also applies to remote sessions. Having a space that you can just use for that work with all your tools ready helps you stay focused and present. Number three, clear agreements. The understanding between you and your client is part of the structure. This includes what the session is for, how it works, payment, and your roles. When this is clear, the session feels more stable. When it's not, there can be a quiet sense of confusion, even if nobody says anything about it. Four, consent. Consent is a big part of feeling safe. This includes touch, how deep the session might go emotionally, and how the session is being guided. When this is clearly talked about, clients feel more comfortable because they know what to expect and what's included. Number five, energetic boundaries. Boundaries help you stay clear on what is yours and what belongs to the client. Without them, it's easy to take on someone else's emotions or feel mixed up in their experience. This is usually when you start to feel tired, overwhelmed, or unclear after a session. Number six, intention. Energy tends to follow structure, and intention provides that structure. A session without a clear intention can feel directionless, even if the techniques being used are sound. Number seven, opening and closing the healing field. A session needs a clear start and a clear finish. If there isn't a clear beginning, it can feel like the session never fully started. If there isn't a clear ending, clients can feel unsettled, and you might still feel connected to the session hours later. Closing the session is just as important as anything you do during it. Next, I want to talk about the deeper layers of a container because there is a lot more. Beyond the structure, there is another layer of this work. Your container can only hold what you're able to hold. Your nervous system, your emotional capacity, and your ability to stay grounded all affects the strength of your container. The first one I want to talk about is the practitioner's internal container and confidence. The practitioner's inner state, such as self trust, emotional steadiness, clarity, and a grounded sense of their role within the session, forms the foundation for the container. Confidence naturally emerges from this internal stability. It's not something performed, which can feel that way sometimes if you're feeling imposter syndrome, but something that develops as practitioners become more anchored in themselves. Clients are often attuned to this, whether consciously or unconsciously. They can sense whether the practitioner feels grounded and secure in their role. When a practitioner's inner foundation is strong, the container feels clear, steady, and reliable. When it's less stable, the edges of the container can soften and become inconsistent. The external structure, such as agreements, timing, and physical space, is often supported by the internal foundation of the practitioner. Over time, confidence in holding container deepens through practice, vigilance, and self reflection. Number two, capacity. Not every container can hold the same level of intensity. A practitioner's nervous system regulation, emotional capacity, energetic stamina, and training all influence how much the container can hold. When a session exceeds that capacity, it can result in overwhelm or burnout for the practitioner. This is one reason why a practitioner's ongoing development, particularly around self regulation, directly affects the strength of their container. Number three, permeability. Containers aren't meant to have rigid walls. They function more like semi-permeable membranes. When a container is too porous, energy and emotional material can leak across boundaries. When it's too rigid, clients may have a difficult time accessing emotions at all. The goal is a quality of exchange that allows presence and connection without a loss of boundaries. An example of this is story. As you heard from my example at the very beginning, sometimes people have a capacity to just go on and on and on about their story. However, I once received sessions from a practitioner who was very focused on not hearing any part of a client's story, believing it was completely unnecessary. During the sessions, I sometimes felt the need to share parts of my story as they naturally came up. Sometimes emotions are just sitting there right below the surface, and speaking them out loud helps bring them up into awareness in order to be healed. However, being shut down in those moments made me feel really cut off and unseen, and it ultimately made me not want to return to that practitioner. Clearly, practitioners need to have clear boundaries around how much is said, but not to the point where the client feels muffled either. Number four, before and after the session. The container begins before the session starts and extends beyond when it ends. Intake processes, scheduling, and pre-session communications are all part of building the container. Integration support, follow-up, and clear offboarding help close it. A session that opens emotional material without any support for integrating afterwards is considered an incomplete container. Number five, rupture and repair. Even well-built containers experience moments of rupture. For example, a session running over time, or the intensity of the session exceeds your capacity, or a moment where the client feels misunderstood. What tends to strengthen a container over time is the repair that follows. Acknowledging what happened and returning to the structure builds trust and deepens the container for future sessions. Now, I want to talk about building your container, and this is a very simple framework I'm going to go over. Number one, before the session, prepare your space physically. Have everything ready before your client arrives. Take a few moments to ground yourself and arrive in your own body before the session begins. Number 2, mark the session is starting. You and your client, therefore, can be on the same page. This is usually done by opening a healing field. I usually start this by opening all my sessions with an invocation. During the session, hold the intention established at the opening and stay present, grounded, and anchored in yourself. And lastly, at the end of the session, you close it. You name that the work is complete. You help your client come back and ground back into their physicality. You also express gratitude and consciously release any shared field between the both of you. After your client leaves, release the session and dismiss the healing field. And lastly, I want to talk about the last phase. This is the embodiment of a container. This is the next stage of development for a practitioner. Over time with practice, holding a container shifts from something a practitioner actively sets up to something they naturally embody. It becomes less about managing structure and more about the quality of presence that they bring into the room. When a practitioner is regulated, clear, and grounded, their presence itself becomes the container. External agreements and rituals still matter, but they serve as a support rather than the primary structure. This level of embodiment develops gradually through consistent practice and honest self-reflection. To close, a container is one of the foundational elements of safe and effective healing work. Understanding what it is, what it's made of, and how to build one consistently gives both the practitioner and the client a more stable ground to work from. The nervous system responds to structure, and when that structure is solid, there's simply more room for the work to go where it needs to go. So if this resonated with you, I would love to hear about it in the comments. Or if you have something to add, or even a story about a container mishap, please share, because we're all learning from each other here. If you liked this video and want to learn more about such topics, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Remember to tune in, listen deeply, shift completely, and bloom. I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for being here.